The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Linderking concludes a visit to Yemen. International reports warn that the Ukraine conflict can overshadow other crises in the Middle East. Biden's nominee for ambassador to Yemen appears before the Senate over his support to the enlisting Houthis as terrorist group. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swela. Shabwa governor holds a meeting with the U.S. envoy to Yemen, a U.S. ambassador assistant, and a delegation from the coalition. During the meeting, the U.S. envoy stated that the military operations to retrieve the coast of Hadramaut in summer 2016 helped the United States dismantle the jihadist organization in Yemen. For the second time in months, the U.S. Special Envoy Tim Linderking visits Yemen. This visit is of a particular importance as it comes in after the UN Security Council resolution that has imposed arms sale on Houthi militia. Although this step was relatively late, yet it reflects unity of the international community towards the need to curb Houthi rebels. The following report has more details.
Tim Linderking, the U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen, and Kathy Wesley, the Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy in Yemen, wrapped up their tour to Yemen today. They conferred with the governors of Hadramaut, Mahra, and Shabwa during their visit. The U.S. delegation emphasized its support for a UN-led peace process that includes the perspectives of various Yemeni groups, including women, civil society leaders, and representatives of other traditionally marginalized groups. The visit to Yemen highlighted the importance of the international community's continued support of economic stability and humanitarian relief operations. Millions of Yemenis have been displaced by the violence and rely on foreign aid to cover basic necessities such as food, healthcare, and water. The United States has provided over $4 billion in humanitarian assistance to Yemen since the conflict began, and it strongly encourages donors to generously support the people of Yemen at the upcoming high-level pledging event for Yemen, co-hosted by the UN, Switzerland, and Sweden on March 16. Yemenis across the nation, even those far from the front lines, have been suffering from years of political and economic upheaval. The visit presented an opportunity to examine the needs in the governorates of Hadramaut, Mahra, and Shabwa, and assess the initiatives needed to improve basic services, economic opportunities, and security, all of which would aid the establishment of peace. This trip to Yemen also highlighted the ongoing challenges caused by terrorism and smuggling, both of which contribute to the country's instability.
Prime Minister discussed latest developments of Yemen Humanitarian Conference with the Norwegian envoy to Yemen. The UN is holding preparations for the Yemeni Humanitarian Conference to be held mid of this March, and the contributions to support the government and the national economy to alleviate the humanitarian situation. Many international experts have started warning that the conflict in Ukraine is likely to impact other crises in the Middle East, including Yemen. Such fears conform with the previous concerns raised by UN officials that aid agencies in Yemen would suspend most of their activities due to funding crisis. More details on this are within this report.
More than 16 million Yemenis are in danger of starvation, according to the United Nations. Last September, World Food Program Director David Beasley stated that 1,000 Yemenis died from hunger each week. Yemenis will be facing more cuts in humanitarian aid in coming months because of funding cuts that could reduce food ratios in a country where millions face starvation. Martin Griffiths added that the humanitarian operation is about to start doing a lot less. And he also added that aid agencies are quickly running out of money, forcing them to slash life-saving programs.
By far the biggest challenge for aid agencies right now is funding. The humanitarian operation, a lifeline for millions of people across Yemen for these many years, is about to start doing a lot less. Aid agencies are quickly running out of money, forcing them to slash life-saving programs. And by the end of January, nearly 2/3 of major UN aid programs had already scaled back or closed altogether.
Most of the estimated 233,000 people who have perished in the war have died as a result of indirect causes, including a lack of food, health care, and infrastructure. This increased the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. The solution to the problems of refugees and displaced people can only come from peace treaties and reconstruction with the help of wealthier nations. The Ukrainian crisis will not make this easier, as relations between Washington and its allies on one side and Moscow on the other side are the worst in 40 years. Yemen drops from the top of the watch list for the first time in 3 years, not because of an improvement in the humanitarian situation, but because crises in other countries are worsening even more rapidly. Yemen is still one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world, with more than half of Yemen's population unable to access food for survival, and the rate of poverty and hunger is increasing every day. The world must not forget about Yemen and how it's facing a critical humanitarian crisis due to 7 years of war. Despite the 7 years of war, Yemenis are still hoping for peace.
The Yemeni embassy is hosting a meeting with Yemen's Minister of Water and Environment. The meeting is also going to host the Dutch Foreign Ministry, the Dutch Embassy to Yemen, and a group of Yemeni researchers and students to discuss Dutch projects in the water sector in Yemen. UNESCO and EU partnerships are working together to scale up the employment of Yemeni youth project. The project aims to increase economic resilience and livelihoods for young Yemenis, and they succeeded in the first phase and employed over 3,380 young Yemenis in urban rehabilitation sites. They are currently working to strengthen the creative sector in Yemen by supporting 13 cultural organizations and employing 800 artists. Stephen Fagan, nominee for ambassador to Yemen, faced questions about whether to designate the Houthi movement as a terrorist organization or not. It was reported that Fagan was a strong supporter of Biden's decision to lift Houthis from the list of terrorists. The following report has more details.
President Joe Biden's nominee for ambassador to Yemen faced questioning from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee over the administration's decision to declassify the Iran-backed Houthis as a foreign terrorist group. Stephen Fagan, who was nominated to serve as ambassador to Yemen, stated that he would work closely with the United States Special Envoy for Yemen to assist United Nations-led efforts to eradicate war in the country. The escalation of hostilities and dramatic increase in civilian casualties in Yemen over the last few months are deeply troubling, both for the long-suffering people of Yemen and for the entire Gulf region, Fagan said. However, continued conflict is not inevitable and peace in Yemen is possible. Senator Ted Cruz pressed Fagan on the Biden administration's decision to rescind the Houthi status as a foreign terrorist organization.
Do you believe the Houthis are terrorists?
Well, Senator, as I noted, the Biden administration has condemned the Houthis' terrorist attacks on Saudi Arabia and the UAE using ballistic missiles and drones.
Okay, let me try that question again. Do you believe the Houthis are terrorists?
Senator, as I said, the Biden administration has condemned the Houthis' terrorist attacks.
Days prior to leaving office, President Donald Trump had labeled the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization, a decision which Biden promptly reversed upon assuming office. While Fagan empathized with Cruz's concerns about the Houthis' recent strikes in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, he said that the Biden administration is still reviewing their designation. My understanding is that the review is considering the anticipated impact of such a designation on the behavior of the Houthis, as well as the anticipated impact on the humanitarian situation, Fagan said. Senator Chris Murphy agreed that classifying the Houthis as a foreign terrorist group has its consequences. Murphy said that we must think within the scope of reality and that the practical consequences of classifying the Houthis as a terrorist organization is that millions of Yemenis will be exposed to famine.
The International Human Rights Watch said that the Houthi militia's use of landmines considered as war crimes. The statement came after the death of 5 civilians during the past 38 hours due to the explosion of landmines planted by the militia. Human Rights further estimated that the number of mines planted by the militia in various areas exceeded 2 million. 3 civilians were wounded as a result of Houthi landmine explosions in Ma'rib and Hodeidah governorates. Yemeni landmine monitor stated that 1 mine exploded in the village of Dar al-Dubala in Hais district and the other exploded in Harib district south of Ma'rib. The city of Hodeidah witnessed incidents of child rape committed by Houthi militants within a month. The Houthi militia continues to violate childhood in the areas under its control, according to human rights sources which documented 11 cases of rape against children in the coastal city of Hodeidah. Blowing up people's houses, especially political opponents, has become a Houthi stereotype approach. Many houses have been damaged completely only because owners of those houses did not subscribe to Houthi rebels' way of rule. As the parliamentary committee is visiting Ma'rib, some of those citizens made a complaint before them. The following report has more details.
The victims that the Houthi militia blew up their homes are demanding justice and the prosecution of the militia locally and internationally. Victims from many governorates whose homes were destroyed by the Houthi militia are demanding justice for them and the prosecution of the militia locally and internationally for the crimes it committed against them that amounted to war crimes against humanity. This came in a hearing organized by the Civil Authority for Victims of House Explosions in the city of Ma'rib for a number of those affected from the governorates of Ma'rib, Al-Bayda, and Ib, in which they explained the violations they were subjected to, ranging from their displacement and looting of their property to the crime of destroying and blowing up their homes.
5 houses belong to me and my brothers were exploded by Houthi rebels. These happened in a Taib district. Also, more than 17 houses were totally damaged by Houthi militia. These houses belong to people we know. They are our neighbors. Taib district, one of the most districts targeted by Houthi rebels in terms of exploding houses.
The latest statistics in 2021 show that we have 59 houses. We couldn't apply for the application because it was hard to reach people. Most of these houses are in Taiz. In Al-Hayma there are about 15 houses, in Al-Bayda 4, and in Ma'rib 3.
Speaking about their suffering, a number of victims complained about the absence of international human rights organizations. They did not pay attention to the crimes committed by the Houthis, which is one of the worst violations in the world. And these organizations have not yet worked to criminalize and punish the Houthi militia for the atrocities it committed against them and other civilians. The international community should take actions against the Houthi militia as fast as possible, or else people will keep dying in Yemen.
Coming next. While the world celebrates March 4th as Employee Appreciation Day, Yemeni civil servants have no salaries nor appreciation under Houthi rule.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف والكيس الدقيق ب18,000 والكيس السكر اليوم ب20,000. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل كيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالتي احنا حالة لما خرج لما ندب احنا شبكيرة ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل ما احنا بحاجة صعبة.
Welcome back. Employee Appreciation Day is observed in the first Friday of March every year. While employees around the globe are given respect and appreciation, Yemeni public service workers have been without salaries for more than 5 years. The following report has more details.
The 4th of March marks the Employee Appreciation Day in the whole world. to acknowledge the hard work and diligence of employees and bestow them with the recognition they deserve, and for paying long hours of work to develop the business they work for. However, while the world celebrates 4th of March, the scene in Yemen is very different, as the first Friday of March has witnessed Yemeni public service workers have got neither salaries nor appreciation since Houthi militia coup, which tore the country apart more than 7 years ago. Apart from acknowledging the importance of workers, Employee Appreciation Day also aims for bringing cheer and happiness to the workforce, which contradicts what is happening to Yemeni employees in a country that was called one day the Happy Yemen. According to UNICEF, more than 135,000 Yemeni teachers have not received their salaries in more than 2 years, which reflects the ongoing war impact on all fields, and employees are paying the price of the unchosen fate of the country. During the conflict, the warring parties have added large numbers of new employees to the public payroll, particularly the military and security services, while Yemen's economy has shrunk. Yemen is also struggling with a large public budget deficit, which was estimated at 660 billion Yemeni riyals in 2018, which has worsened the situation for Yemeni employees and resulted in deprivation of their salaries on a regular basis. In light of all these struggles, the Building Foundation for Development institution illuminates a bulb of hope by delivering expressions of appreciation to their employees. They further stated that their appreciation should be sent to all Yemeni employees in all governorates for their efforts, especially at difficult times they face. Employee Appreciation Day is set to provide a clear path for the future. However, which future are we talking about in an exhausted country?
Clashes erupted between the Houthis and the tribes of Beni Nouf and Shulen in Al Jawf. The sources stated that the clashes took place when the militia tried to prevent the unloading of one of the trailers at gas station. According to the sources, the clashes resulted in the injury of 2 people. Bloomberg agency confirmed that wheat prices rose to the highest level since 2008. In light of the escalating fears of a global shortage of supplies, it indicated that the war in Ukraine prevented Kyiv from delivering more than 25% of the wheat crop exports, which reached a record of 40%. The war has closed Ukraine's main export ports, disrupted logistics and transportation, and cropping may stop in the coming months. Sana'a witnesses the longest queues of cars due to oil derivatives crisis. Local residents said that the price of a 20-liter barrel of gasoline on the black market amounted to 45,000 riyals, the highest in its history, locally and globally. Ma'rib Governorate witnesses the toughest fuel crisis since months. People are complaining that they have to stand in long queues for days in order to get only some fuel. The following report has more details.
Ma'rib Governorate witnessed a stifling crisis in the matter of gasoline, which resulted in long queues extending for great distances in front of the gas station, adding new burdens that are reflected in the lives of citizens in the city. The lack of gasoline, or the high cost of it, is a crisis that has affected all the citizens of the governorate of Ma'rib, which puts the city in front of a difficult challenge.
2 gallons are for 3,500 riyals, and you have to stand for 5 days in order to get them. It is a real crisis. How come it's a crisis when Safar is here in Ma'rib? What about people in other governorates? What do they do in order to get petrol?
The lack of oil derivatives caused many vehicles to stop working and cut off the source of income for many families, including the displaced, and doubling the suffering of the citizens inside the city, which led to an increase in transportation costs. While the doors were open to black markets with an expansion inside the governorate, the price of a gallon of 20 liters capacity reached 26,000 riyals, while the official stations of the oil company remained fixed at 3,500 riyals.
We call on the governor to take immediate actions to end this fuel crisis. I have got 7 kids. Prices are going very high. We stand in long queues for days in order to get just few of this fuel, perhaps 2 gallons in 5 days. What shall we do with them? We are drivers and we need to work. What shall we do with them?
The local authorities in the governorate explained the reasons for the crisis that affected the city, despite the governorate getting its full share of gasoline. However, the successive crises in the militia's control areas made many vehicles flock to Ma'rib, which caused an increase in demand by citizens, as their prices are low compared to the prices in other governorates. According to citizens, the fuel crisis has become an obsession and concern for citizens here, and threatens many service institutions and vehicles, which depend mainly on oil derivatives.
Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Lunderking concludes a visit to Yemen. International reports warn that the Ukraine conflict can overshadow other crises in the Middle East. Biden's nominee for ambassador to Yemen appears before the Senate over his support to de-enlisting Houthis as terrorist group. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. See you soon.